Hello, everyone, and welcome to our live event, Artificial Intelligence in Asset Management, Balancing Human Expertise and Machine Learning for Better Outcomes. I am Andrea Sala, and today I'll be your moderator. Joining us today, we have Federico Invernizzi, our Chief Operating Officer, Axel Meyer, our partner at MDOTM, and Lorenzo Malanga, our Vice President of Research. Today, we are here because AI is increasingly relevant. Of course, it has reshaped a wide array of industries, and investment management is definitely no exception. This is why today I would like to start off presenting two insights that very efficiently summarize this. First of all, we have the CFA Institute that has estimated that over 80% of investment professionals want to integrate AI in their investment process. And as we can see, this number is only on the rise. Additionally, Deloitte has identified that AI adoption increases numerous KPIs, including productivity, AUM, and revenues, showing how AI adoption is unlikely to stop anytime soon. So let's take a step back. For those of you who don't know us, let me give you a quick introduction. We are MDOTM, and we are a fintech company that develops AI to build reliable portfolios. Today, we are over 110 people, including our team of physicists, engineers, data scientists, and the MDOTM Lab, which is our international network of universities and academic thought leaders throughout the globe. Our offices are spread out throughout London, Milan, and New York. Today, our two solutions include portfolio advisory, where we build bespoke portfolios at a security level for our institutional clients, and Sphere, which is our AI-driven investments platform, which today supports investment process of numerous clients across the UK, EU, and the US. Today, Sphere supports over $120 billion in assets. So we work mainly with, exclusively actually, with institutional clients, which includes banks, asset and wealth managers, insurance companies, and family offices. Today, I would like to briefly present you the agenda. We're going to start off with the burning questions of AI in investing, which cover the technology, the role of humans in AI in investing, as well as the concrete benefits that these can provide. At the end, we're going to have a live Q&A, so remember to leave your questions as we proceed. And one last thing, today, all of the things that we're going to present to you and share with you, we're actually going to send them over in the next few days. So don't worry, we got your back. Starting off with the first question, which is, I think, is a question that we all have, and you might have it if you're here today. And this question is directed towards Federico. Why should I integrate AI into my investment process? And what is the benefit?
Thank you, Andrea. So starting from what is the benefit, we should narrow down the question a little bit, because AI is a broad topic and AI can be applied to do multiple things and multiple integrations into an investment process. We are seeing some of these on the screen right now. So it could be used to optimize your positioning, for idea generation, for forecasting market regimes, or for asset allocation, for example. We'd like to break down these processes into two different steps. Ideally, every investment process starts from idea generation. That means coming up with ideas to allocate your portfolios, your assets, according to a certain market view, and portfolio construction. So from that idea, you have to end up with an investable portfolio that you actually allocate to, selecting ISIN codes and weights and assets to be in the portfolio. The sum of these two components deliver your portfolio return. That can be split, and we like to reason this way, into intuition alpha and operational alpha. Each of those derives from one of the activities that we described. Intuition alpha, from making the right calls, having the right view on what's going to happen over the next period in time in the markets, and operational alpha derives from building portfolios the right way, exploiting correlations the right way, doing risk management, and doing a proper construction of different risk premia and combining them well together. Artificial intelligence techniques can help and deliver alpha on both levels. So we'll start from intuition alpha, which we luckily can measure, because we've been doing this for a number of years now, and intuition, and we are in the space of investment. So these numbers, these benefits are measurable in the form of performance, ultimately. So we're now looking at the signals, the application of signals on geographic equities, geographic fixed income indices, US sectors, European sectors, and we're looking at the results that are obtained in terms of alpha, not beta. So it's just the value added on each single of these type of layers of approach, starting from 84 basis points, allocating amongst geographic equities, going down to 1.62 or 1.63% in terms of alpha on a yearly basis, delivered over the years by allocating on US sectors, EU sectors. This comes with a volatility attached to it, of course, and you can see that number, 2.42, 0.72, 2.3, 2.36. And basically, this adds up to an efficiency ratio that you can add on top of your performance, ranging from 0.36 up to 0.71 in terms of applying these signals to your investment views. And this is intuition alpha. This is just a few of the numbers and a few of the signals we can deliver with our methodology, but are the most relevant, I'd say. Operational alpha, on the other hand, is all about combining this information together in a smart way, building robust portfolios. What we've done in this slide, and you see it summarized here, is basically cycling through a number of parameters and building 2,500 portfolios with different methodologies. We are starting and doing a grid search from the same inputs. So the expected returns and the asset classes, the investable universe is the same, both for the Black and Litterman median variance standard portfolios and for portfolios optimized and built using Sphere, which is our platform. What we obtain is, of course, a few takeaways, starting from less dispersion. That's important. So you see the bundle of Sphere portfolios that are generated. Of course, they're higher. We'll look at why they come up higher in terms of performance. But most important is that they are consistent. So the dispersion is less. There is less turnover, minus 20% on average compared to the mean variance portfolios. And there is more than everything, an increase in Sharpe ratio. So we have an average improvement by 35% in terms of Sharpe ratio that is delivered by higher risk-adjusted returns, coming both from the return side of things and the risk side of things. This is delivered basically by combining in a smart way and looking forward to help allocation through better estimation of correlation matrix and having a robust pipeline for the allocation. This, of course, is the results that we obtain with our models and that we deploy onto Sphere. And it's not just us telling us, fortunately. So we've been around for quite a while. We've been around for more than 7 years now, and we've been investing clients' assets since then. And so we have, to prove that, we have our clients testing the data and sometimes also telling us that they're happy to integrate these inputs into their investment process. This is an email we are fond of telling us exactly that. So I think this sums up the benefits of AI and what you can expect out of it.
Okay, thank you, Federico. I think that was a great way of explaining the concrete benefit that AI can bring to your investment process. However, I think we would all like to learn a little bit more the technical aspect behind this. So this is why the upcoming question is going to be for Lorenzo, which is, what about transparency? How can you ensure AI is fully explainable?
Well, thanks, Andrea, for actually the really relevant question, because explainability and transparency in this business is basically non-negotiable for mainly 2 reasons. One is, let's say, business-oriented. So we are in the business of supporting investment decision-making of large institutional investors. So the core value needs to be trust. So by definition, you cannot trust a black box that does a lot of complex calculations, first of all. On the other hand, we are really playing a game which has its own rules with respect to other classical application of machine learning and artificial intelligence techniques, which means we don't have the luxury of observing a ground truth, right? So we are not basically recognizing objects from video or even try to build a winning strategy of an AlphaGo or a chess game, right? Where there are closed rules. And so you can basically maximize the performance you obtain without taking much care of what's going on in between. But we are in a different business, right? So how do we make sure our systems and models are transparent and explainable? Well, we need to make them explainable by design. On one side, we designed our system in such a way that the building blocks are all inspectable and measurable. And on the other side, of course, we need to understand, I would say in an obsessive way, our data, and the financial information is bringing up to the table. So speaking about the first chunk, the first pillar, well, in general, let me take through a really simple example, right? So in general, I think you are kind of used to this kind of representation where you have a really deep model with a lot of layers in between. You have an input and you have an output, right? But, however precise might be the output, you really need to have control. And in this architecture, there is basically no way to do it. So what we did was basically trying to replicate a true investment process in such a way that our model is divided in modules which are inspectable, which have their own expected behavior given the stochastic nature of financial markets. So it's really important that we divided this aspect of course, in a divide and conquer approach, which means we are all the time able to understand what kind of drivers and impact are having each area of this pipeline in order to get the final output. So basically, if I have to sum up in a sentence, we basically broke down the full process of modeling expected returns from various matrices, position indicators, by basically inspecting every layer of our model and knowing exactly what is the safe operating region of each of them. Still, this pipeline is, let's say, void if we don't know what kind of information is flowing through the pipes. And there comes the second important ingredient, which is data. We all know that garbage in means garbage out, but in financial domain, it's even more important to understand the financial dynamic at every data point is measuring. So, of course, we do a lot of research on every kind of data point that is produced by machines and humans. We have like short-term, low predictive power information like market news. It changes all the time. It expires really often and scratches the surface of what's going on. In between, we have alternative data whose, let's say, predictive power can vary widely across applications and whose horizon is typically medium term. And then finally, we have really clean structure and informative data, which has also a longer predictive horizons, and therefore they are more relevant, which are composed, of course, of microeconomic variables, which gives a measure of what's going on in the real world, company fundamentals and specific instruments, let's say anagraphics, which give us a precise screenshot of what are the ingredients or the modeling that we are doing. And finally, we have also market data. So everything which can be measured out of price action and movements, which we all know is really forward-looking and contains a lot of information. So to bring this up to the final layer, it's really important that in our case, the system is explainable by design, which means we do not apply layers post-training. Our system is natively explainable and transparent. And on the other side, we really know the data flow and how it impacts our system. So I hope this covers this huge topic.
Okay, thank you, Lorenzo. I think that was a great way of, explaining the two main pillars of AI explainability. Now, we've seen how to render the AI explainable. We've seen the concrete benefits it can provide. Now, but where do people fit in all of this? So this is why the upcoming question that is going to be for Axel is, what role does human expertise play in AI-driven investment management?
Thanks, Andrea. That's it's a very important question. I think it's also a question where the most misperceptions actually exist. And just to give you a preview, the role of humans in that dialogue is extremely significant. But that just to give you an idea how some of the most sophisticated investors think about it, I want to give you two quotes. One is from Ray Dalio, the founder of Bridgewater. He said, AI is extremely powerful. At Bridgewater, we use it to work in parallel with our managers to produce better investment decisions. And Kenneth Griffin from Citadel said, balancing the influx of new tech like AI with the power of the human mind is key for better decision-making in the financial market. So I think, they both kind of say the same, that you have to use, the best sides of both, of the machine and of the human. But which part does it play? So, we tend to think about it, machines deliver. And what do we mean with that? Machines have, let's call them well-trained machines, have very important properties, and that is that they can do very mundane work, calculations, etc. in a very, very fast time. They can do millions of that without getting tired, without losing concentration. And in this, myriad of data, find interesting conclusions and forecasts that humans use. And so then the human comes in, and we say human surprise. So the machine delivers and the human surprises. What it means is like that the human takes that that work that has been done by the machine, that reasonably mundane task, but a lot of it, and thinks around the box, thinks around the corner, and uses that in a way that makes the decision even more meaningful. So let's you pick that up what Federico mentioned before. The more traditional way, you can break down an investment process on a very high level between an idea generation, using different kind of inputs, using different research, etc., and then bringing the portfolio together in a portfolio construction process that has been established by the firm. So, but what then now is the role of the AI into that? And so there are two parts. And if you think back about Federico's distinction between the intuitional alpha and the optimization of operational alpha. So on the intuitional side, this is where the idea enhancement comes in. So as an example, we analyze about 2 million, or our AI analyzes about 2 million data points a day and comes up with an expected, things like expected returns, expected risk, market indicators, regime analysis that is unbiased, unemotional, and independent. And so that helps forming better, more robust, more resilient ideas that could be brought into the portfolio. And then the next step, where then the operational or the optimization alpha comes in, is where the AI enhances the portfolio through custom constraints. You have reference portfolios that are exactly what you want. So this is really making it congruent to your needs, that exactly reflects what you want to do and what you would express in the framework you want to give. And the result is an improved performance. And from here, we start again from the beginning. Right. So it's very clear that the AI is actually doing the heavy lifting in terms of the laborious work. But you can also see in those processes that humans actually are the center of the decision making, and are the ones who take advantage of what AI can do and bring it to much improved results. So will AI replace us? I would say no, but humans using AI, they will replace us. So bringing it back, and this is kind of almost a summary of everything we have seen and heard so far, is a quote from one of our clients, the CEO, in a press release, said the following: adopting AI in our investment process has given us an augmented humanity to make better informed investment decisions. I think this is, it's a perfect answer to the question that was raised about the role human expertise plays in AI-driven investment management.
Thank you, Axel. Now, we've seen the concrete benefits, we saw the role of humans, and we saw how we can ensure explainability in a technology. However, let's take a deep dive into how Sphere, our AI-driven investments platform, actually works. This is why the next question is for Lorenzo. How do portfolios remain optimized over time?
Well, thanks for the drilling question. Of course, this is a challenge that we face all the time, like how much weight we put on past historical observation, and how much relevancy we attribute to recent data, right? So let me take a step back, though. As I anticipated before, we are working in a, let's say, in a game where the rules are really, really challenging. You know, it's really hard to understand what is a good signal and what is a bad signal. So in general, what we do is to divide and conquer again, and divide our modeling approach into two key pillars. On one side, we have non-chronological learning, and on the other side, we have regime analysis. I will briefly explain what those bits mean. The first side, so non-chronological learning, basically is a complex model that tries to capture market properties, market dynamics, how risk premia evolve over time and interact among asset classes. So let me just take a metaphor. This kind of modeling involves capturing the slow thinking of the market, so, and its market participants. And the key part of this, and the name suggests it, is that the flowing of time, so the arrow of time, is completely removed from this stage in such a way that the system is able not to memorize the past, rather to learn what is the emerging behavior hidden in the market. So it really can adapt to unseen data. And this is key. On the contrary, the regime analysis framework basically brings back the concept of time and brings it back in a powerful way by characterizing markets by risk regimes, which means we have a model that basically makes probabilistic forecasts of possible regime shift in the future, which basically mean how we expect the market structure to evolve. We have different regimes, and now I'm gonna show you a real life example of, let's say, an event that we all know and remember, unfortunately, which is the 2020 COVID drawdown, right? So an example where speed and velocity was actually key. So let me share my screen quite quickly. There we go. I hope everyone can see this nice dashboard. So we are speaking about the US large equity sector, right? And let me zoom in the reference period we are talking about. So like the 2020 drawdown. So basically, as you can see, here we have three colors in general, which identify different regime. Of course, the green one represents low risk regime, the yellow one, middle risk regime, the red one represents really chaotic and stressful phases in the market. Here, you can appreciate the fact that our detection algorithm actually spotted a really fast transition, something rarely happened in the past. And as you can appreciate, you can also see how, speaking about transparency, how this was basically detected in a probabilistic way. So here, you can see how around the COVID outbreak, the model detected a really changing paradigm, which meant that those probabilistic forecasts moved a lot in a short period of time, ensuring adaptability without actually anything changing in the market. It was really an exogenous event, which actually made emerge a really chaotic behavior, especially between industry sectors and correlated asset classes. So here, as you can appreciate, this fast transition meant our portfolios were able to adapt quickly and basically absorb the fact that the paradigm changed quite abruptly. Of course, this is one of the examples, but in general, our system works in such a way that the regime shift could actually be extremely fast and hence adapt to a changing market conditions.
Thank you, Lorenzo. Okay, everyone, remember that today we have a limited amount of time. So everything that Lorenzo said is going to be sent over to you in a quick recap. And well, that was just a glimpse of Sphere. So if you're interested in seeing the whole platform, stick around till the end and we'll let you know how you can do that and provide you a couple informations on that. So we got you covered. So we've seen a pretty solid base for AI in investing, all the way from the benefits, from the people, how it works, So we're all asking ourselves, how can we actually begin, this journey? So this is why the fifth question for Federico is, how can investment managers integrate AI into their existing investment processes without creating too much disruption?
Thank you. I think the key part of the question is without creating too much disruption, probably. So we'll look at a standard investment process, your typical situation, and we'll look at a couple of use cases. Of course, there are just two possible options, but there are so many more that make you see how AI can be integrated and make sense into different investment processes. Broadly speaking, what you have in this slide is basically on the top left corner, the beginning of the process, whereby you build your strategic asset allocation and tactical asset allocation. Typically, it's an investment committee doing that. You move on towards the bottom right corner to model portfolios and basically some intermediate layer for implementation. And then on the bottom right corner, you have your securities portfolio that is actually invested. And that's any investment process, more or less, with adjustments, with tweaks, but that's common for almost everyone. AI, with the green boxes that are now appearing on screen, can help on different levels. So top left is AI helping investment committees and decision makers getting a better understanding of the world and tactical indications for their allocation activities and an independent and complementary point of view. So that's complementing the idea generation part that we've seen before with Axel as well. Then you have a layer in between that is about optimization. It's about technicalities that are super important and involve a lot of Excel files typically and constraints and model portfolios that stand in between the idea and the portfolio. And finally, you have custom investable universe, security selection, and portfolio construction. So these two latest elements, they compose your operational alpha that we discussed earlier. So this is in general where this could be applied. We'll look at two cases. One is a US-based asset manager managing roughly $300 billion. And they started from, of course, so they're a really complex company and mature company. And so they have a process that is fairly complex and is simplified in this chart. It starts from a monthly investment committee defining a tactical asset allocation. And then each mandate and fund needs to adapt to a strategic asset allocation, or rather a shadow benchmark, and fund constraints that are specific to that mandate. And then ultimately they get to the fund composition. What we did working with them is basically helping out on two levels. First one is by adding our risk regime forecasting to the investment committee. That's basically research that comes on the table of the investment committee and makes them take better investment decisions. It improves and complements what they know about risk. Lorenzo just a second ago explained what risk regimes was telling us in terms of the US equity markets back in 2020. And this, of course, can be applied to multiple asset classes at any given time and on different time horizons. Second thing we do, beyond providing this input, is basically applying Sphere to optimize for this idea, this investment view, together with the strategic asset allocation, together with the fund constraints, and basically providing a multidimensional optimization and an allocation for each individual fund and mandate. So a little bit of inputs and a little bit of technology to process all of that. Intuition and operational alpha. Next use case is a European-based insurance company. And here the case becomes a little more complex. Of course, the investment process of an insurance company requires a lot of complexities, a lot of parameters, a lot of elements that come into play. So the asset allocation activity, the investment activities, is driven a lot by the risk models that are applied. In particular, in the European Union, solvency capital requirements call for and imply capital absorption that differs from the different asset classes that you're investing in. So what we did in this case was basically train our AI to work within this environment that is very specific, very idiosyncratic for this type of player in the investment space. And we developed a new type of expected returns that is regime aware and can be plugged into this framework to supply meaningful and value-added inputs that take into account solvency risk framework and deliver the value out of this very long and sophisticated process. In addition to that, we also provide some tactical allocation and some advisory on single stocks. But that's another case where basically we can see that AI and the technology we're offering adapted and complemented the investment process that was already in place. Of course, institutional investors have processes in place, and we are here to integrate into that.
Okay, thank you, Federico, for showing us how AI can really integrate into any investment process and how it can be customizable, for each client. So the last question, which is directed towards Axel, is what are the practical steps to integrate AI into your investment process?
Yeah, so this kind of is very nicely closing the loop. So basically, what Federico just described, this is how the clients actually use it. But how do we get to this point? And what's the client journey to get to this point? But before we talk about these steps, I think there's one thing I would like to mention first. It's really what's necessary to make sure it's going to be successful. So we call them the principles of AI adoption. There are three. The first one is customize and integrate. What that means is, and this could almost be the litmus test when you consider integrating AI and with whom you're going to do that. The AI has to adapt to what you need and not the other way around. So if you have to compromise on that level, then it's not a good use of the AI, or it's maybe not a good provider of the AI. So you have to make sure that you get to 100% what you need without compromising. The second principle is the question of how much internal and external capabilities you use. It's very clear. I think we've been able to show that through Lorenzo's and Federico's comments and Andrea's introduction that just two people in the laptop are not going to cut it. So it's think about what are your strengths in that process, and what can the external partner bring. So leverage internal, external capabilities, very important. And then almost the most important one is the right mentality. And this doesn't, we mentioned it many times, like, it's like working together. So human and machine are working together, since it's that augmentation of use, and that the AI empowers humans to do better, more focused, more diligent work. So having this idea that the AI can support what you do, it doesn't replace it, it just makes it better. So these three principles are very critical. We have seen that with all of our clients. If that's adhered to, it's going to be successful. So then what are the steps actually? And there's basically five. And the first two is something you as a potential user of AI would do by yourself. And then the second three, that's the one. These are the three that you do in collaboration with an AI partner. So let's start with the exploration phase. And it's kind of the soul searching you have to do. And this is where principle number 3 comes in, having this mentality to think, okay, AI can actually help. So it's kind of investigating the benefits the AI can have for your process, where you can plug in, where initially there's little need of change from what you do. It's just more information, better information. And so through that, you basically explore amongst different options that would work, and you can start with the ones that's the easiest to implement. So if you have that, if you have done your soul searching, then the next step is like finding a partner who really is meeting your needs. And this is coming back to the first principle about making sure that the AI adapts to you. Having to compromise at that level is the wrong place to compromise. So choosing the right partner is very critical to make sure that the process is going to be successful. So after that, then together with your partner, you really look at the investment process in a way that you almost decompose it and think of what are the elements, what kind of input do I have, what kind of input do I need, and then you find the different components where the AI can actually be applied to. So this is almost like you come up with your menu, but these are the things you want to have changed, and then together with your AI partner, you agree on that, and then comes to a point where the models can actually be trained, and this is the fourth step. The models train so that the AI is really fitting your needs. So again, it's the principle number one. Do not compromise that. So and this is why AI in general is so useful, since it is adaptive. It can adapt to many things, and you'd have to take benefit of that. And then the last step, this is basically then going back to the examples that we have seen from Federico, how clients actually then integrate it, and what part of the process is. This is when you start to use that. So then the question is, so how long is this going to take? So for the first bit of the soul searching partner selection, this is kind of up to you. But then when you start working with a partner, and this is what we have seen, depending on the complexity, what we would do. So the insurance example was maybe a little bit on the longer end of that, but roughly between 3 and 6 weeks. And to think about, again, principle number 2 about leveraging external and internal resources. This is where you can save a lot of time. I mean, just to give you a little bit more input about the insurance example. So the client had budgeted 2-year time frame for that, and we did it, in the time frame you see here. So to get started, one very important thing is, you have to find within the company, you're almost like the visionary who helps you pushing or moving that project through. And that person is kind of the ambassador in both directions. So helping you, your bigger environment to understand what AI can do for you, but then also helping your partner, your AI partner, to understand what you really need and what are the big values for you. So who needs to get involved? Of course, the investment team is the primary user of it. To some extent, the operations team, but not necessarily. It really depends more on what the integration looks like. And you might, notice that the IT team is not here. You would only really come and play if you would have, a direct connection to the data source API connection. But otherwise, it's actually reasonably light touch in terms of operational IT input. So bringing all of this together kind of gives you hopefully a feeling what can be done with AI, and how you can go through the process of working with a partner and making AI as part of your process.
Thank you, Axel, for showing us a step-by-step onto how investment managers can integrate AI into their investment process. Before we hop onto the live Q&A, I would like to share with you some information to start your AI journey. Here are a couple of QR codes in case you want to try Sphere today, or read the white paper in order to know more about what's inside the technology in detail, or you can talk to one of our experts directly. So let's kick off this Q&A. The first question we have, it's for Lorenzo, which says, which data sources and types are the most useful for training and validating AI models in asset management?
Well, again, this is really a meaningful question, because it all boils down to the information you manage, you process, and how you extract value of it. All right. So, as I was saying before, we really love structured data because it contains most of the information, and most of the information can be traced back to actual financial dynamics and drivers. So in general, as I said, we tend to look at every kind of data every machine and human can possibly produce in this really complex environment. Still, the most of impact and most of the evaluation of the models is focused on mainly market data, fundamental data, and macroeconomic data, which of course give you a really deep and complete picture of what's going on, starting from Main Street, like macroeconomic stuff. So is the economy hot? Is inflation going up or down? Are expectation in company earnings improving or decreasing? So all this kind of stuff, of course, it's incredibly important in order to model some real phenomenon. On the other side, we put a lot of attention in cleaning and processing fundamental data. So like knowing exactly what a specific firm is focused on, what's the strength and weakness of their balance sheets, the expected growth, what are the driver behind those growth, and so on and so forth. And then we have, the most fascinating, I would say, but also the most mysterious and tricky to deal with, which is market data, We all know they absorb a lot of information. They contain everything, but it is important to have a powerful technique in order to extract and generalize the important patterns. So regarding this aspect, we of course take into consideration price movements, distribution of prices, returns, various covariance matrices, co-integration, tail risk, I mean, you name it. I could stay here for a couple of hours just naming data points. I don't know how boring it could turn. But in general, we put a lot of, I would say also, almost paranoid attention on what's being analyzed and what's being, made flow through the system, right? So the last comment I would like to regarding this is that, of course, there is also a coupling between the structure of the model and the kind of data we deploy. So in the pipeline I showed you before, of course, some sort of data will have more impact on specific areas. And so we bring back a little bit on transparency. But, to make the long story short, we love and we actually encourage to validate and train models on really structured data, which has also more robust statistical properties.
Okay, thank you, Lorenzo. The next question is for Federico. One of our viewers is asking, can they integrate all of this into their own platform? What do you say?
Yes, they can, meaning that what we've seen in my last answer was about the investment process and the bits and pieces that can be used and integrated into an investment process that already is in place. And of course, all of those green boxes meant that those are modules that are provided through Sphere, the platform we've briefly seen with Lorenzo, but also through API connections. So ideally, one could connect the expected returns module, another client that would need the optimizer could connect that and provide input data from its own system. So we built a modular architecture that can be plugged in and wired to different existing systems.
Okay, thank you. Now we have another question, this time for Axel. What role do you see AI playing in asset management firms of the future?
Oh, an integral role. I think that, I think what was very clear that the reason why AI is used now is twofold, right? So one, the amount of data that's out there is increasing every day. Just to give an example, 90% of the data that exists today has been produced in the last 2 years, right? And this is, continuing like that. At the same time, the last, 15 years or so, computing power has gone up about 1,000 times and computing cost has going down 98%. So that suddenly makes it viable. And the only way to be able to make sense out of this data is using AI. And I think what we have seen very nicely in the different applications, how clients use it, there's the right way of using AI for every investment manager, for every asset owner to use that properly. But why would you not take advantage of something that really takes, is doing the heavy lifting, is doing the mundane stuff, the, boring stuff. And you just focus on, your own creativity and what you're really good at. So I think that it's paramount and people will use it definitely more and more, but in different ways.
Okay, thank you. So we are a bit running out of time, but we do have left a couple of questions. So let's try and keep the answers a bit concise. The upcoming question we have is for Federico. How do you measure the effectiveness of AI models in asset management?
Well, basically by, as we started on this, and we are lucky enough to be judged by the performance of it. So AI models, as all other models, quantitative, discretionary approaches are measured by looking at performance ultimately. So there is no secret measurement for AI models.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, last but not least, we have a last question for Lorenzo, which is a bit long, so suit yourself. Okay. Do you use neural networks as a form of AI in your models? Or what is the most common algorithm or linear regression, for example, you most commonly use for modeling? That is the first part. And then the second part of the question is, how do you smooth out the important variables, but might have data or missing, or might now have data or missing to make a confident variable in play for the model? How do you smooth out important variables, I'd say?
Okay, let's start from the first one. I got it quite right. So in general, yeah, we deploy different classes of machine learning models. So there is no a single, let's say, technique we prefer, but in general, we definitely deploy neural nets, especially for the non-chronological learning side I explained before. And actually, the big building block of the regime analysis is actually composed of hidden marker models, which are powerful techniques, which is quite widespread in the in the AI sector. We basically blended and adapted to our use case. And in general, we all tend to work as a, let's say, collective ensemble of models. So basically, there is no really a king over other models, but we embrace also diversity, because every kind of model can capture different nonlinearities. So I hope this helps addressing the question. I wasn't quite sure about the second one. I don't know if you can briefly repeat it.
How do you smooth out the important variables, but might have data that is missing to make a confident variable? I'm not pretty sure. Do you get it from there?
That's really a long answer, because in general, as I was mentioning before, we deal with a lot of different data points, and they have usually different availability. First of all, they could be started being measured by, I don't know, maybe 1 year ago for some kind of data points. They could be dated back to the 70s, to the 80s. But so of course we deploy the usual, let's say, smoothing, filtering, processing techniques in order to augment data whenever it's necessary for our models to work as expected. But then again, this is really prone to a kind of bias we are kind of paranoid about. It doesn't make sense to use data which is, let's say, retro projected in the past. You would actually, for example, do backtest on data that wasn't really there at the time. So for example, if you could backtest some strategy on, I don't know, the 90s, in the 90s, you would basically deploy current computing power and modeling techniques in an environment we was just using different instruments. For example, there was no internet, right? So it's a really tricky situation you have to deal with and to manage from first principles in general.
Thank you, Lorenzo. So actually just a couple more questions came in. So let's try and make them fit in by today. So this one is for Federico. Is there a lot of tech work to get started?
To get started, no. You can get started quite easily. So we developed something that is no code, and you can, as a portfolio manager, an asset allocator, a CIO, you can start using with your team. Then you can get into integrations, as we discussed before, but it's not massive. I'd say, of course, it depends. It varies a lot, but you can get started, that's for sure.
Thank you. And finally, which is a good question to wrap up, I'd say, for Axel, do we have to adopt AI as part of a digital transformation exercise, or can we run the AI adoption independently?
That's an interesting question. I'm not sure if I'm able to answer it as concise as Federico answered his questions. I do think that, the AI is a tool, right? It's a tool that has to be used properly. And so if you have a tool, you have to think about, what do I use it for? Right? You buy a chainsaw to cut down trees. So I would say it makes more sense to, develop the AI and use it in conjunction with a problem you want to solve. Just for the fact of having AI, I think that's almost like a mute exercise. It's very, it maybe has some academic purpose, but I do think if you understand that AI is a tool that helps making your life easier and leads to better results, then it has to be in conjunction with something.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, just one last question. We just got it in, and then we'll wrap up. This one is for Federico. Are asset owners showing interest in AI from an investment perspective?
Yes, they are. It's a little different, meaning that an asset owner is a different beast from an asset manager. They have different tasks, and they're more interested in portfolio analytics, strategic asset allocation, fund selection, and we can cover and help on that side as well. But of course, it needs customization, and you need to understand the real need. As Axel said, it's not a matter of adding AI per se, but rather understanding what you're trying to solve. So you typically end up looking at longer time horizons and fewer asset classes, a little more alternative assets. And so it changes a little bit the point of view. But yes, there is a lot of interest from them as well.
Okay, I'd say this is a good place to start wrapping up. Now, everybody, remember that we will be sending over everything that we shared today. And if you want to start your AI journey today, you can go ahead and here's some information to try Sphere today, or learn more about the technology that is behind Sphere, or directly talk to one of our experts. Thank you all. Thank you, Federico, Axel, and Lorenzo, for joining us today and answering the most burning questions around AI and investments. And thank you for everyone tuning in. Goodbye.
Goodbye.